coming at you with the top running backs for the 2025 season as we get into draft season. We still are pushing towards our goal of 750 subscribers by the time the season starts. So if you hit that subscribe button, we would be very appreciative. So our RB1 remains Saquon Barkley, despite a lot of the potential hesitation about him being the top option, right? I think Bijan has kind of taken over as that consensus. But for both of us, it's still Saquon. Still feel like the offensive line is amazing. He was RB1 pretty much, on a per game basis. I know Gibbs caught him in the last week when he didn't play, but over 2,000 yards. There's been some rumors that he's maybe going to be a little more involved in the passing game this year, maybe cover up some of that potential regression on the ground. And so I still really like Saquon Barkley. Up next is Bijan Robinson. Obviously love him as well from week 6 on. Once he got consistent high-end usage, he was very good, over 20 points per game. No complaints here from Bijan whatsoever. He's going to catch the ball a lot. The ground game should be very concentrated in him, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he can do this year. And then Jahmyr Gibbs is number 3, and this is kind of its own little sub-mini tier up top. I really do think that these 3 players kind of stand above. And Gibbs, we saw what he can do without David Montgomery, but even when Montgomery's out there, he's still a very consistent and high-end producer. There's not a lot of ups and downs in his game, only 1 game below double-digit points last season. The 4th guy we have now is Christian McCaffrey. I've come around on him as we continue to get positive reports out of camp that he's healthy. When he's going, he's the best running back in the game. Obviously, there's huge injury concerns, but I've softened and moved him up to 4. Number 5 is Devon Achane. And again, I feel like these two are really difficult for me to rank. And I saw you came around on Achane quite a bit in this most recent rankings update. So I was pretty happy to see that. At 6 is Derrick Henry, just rock solid year over year. Going to be a high scoring offense. It's going to be funneled through him.
It's interesting with McCaffrey specifically, like Garindo's banged up. Jordan James is banged up. They're telling us McCaffrey's healthy. The Niners have the easiest schedule in the NFL. Ayuk's not looking to start until like week 6. Like Debo's gone. So if this really does funnel through him and they're beating up on teams, and I think they're over under on season wins is like 10.5. So everyone's expecting them to be great. We could be seeing maybe not the ceiling that we've seen, at the heights of his career, but if he finishes as the RB1, I don't think any of us will be completely shocked. So it'll be interesting to see the delta of, where that RB3 is drafted and then to CMC, because a lot of people, when they're at the turn, he's going to be staring them in the face. And I guarantee you when people are drafting and drinking a couple beers, his name's going to look even more exciting. I can see it happening in our league. We've got a few Niners fans in our league, so yeah, I wouldn't be totally shocked.
And after a couple drinks at the end of the night, right? Looking very nice. So.
Mm-hmm. It's like that meme where someone's like looking back at the other girl. It's like, oh, safety or CMC's upside. So I can see that happening for sure. And then with Achane, yeah, I mean, I moved him up a couple spots. I just think, we just have to operate assuming that Tua's going to play a full healthy season, as scary as that is. And we've seen how dominant he is when he's paired with Tua and how quickly the floor falls underneath him. And I think after watching this preseason game, just the combination of Zach Wilson and the Texas kid, Ewers, is not super inspiring. So I get there's some risk baked in with him being a smaller running back. But I don't know, Jalen Wright got some opportunity to have some goal line carries. He didn't do anything with it. I know Tyreek Hill's been saying Wright should be the goal line back, but there's a chance that Wright just kind of fizzles out as a prospect, and we don't really know what the whole Ollie Gordon situation is going to look like either.
Yeah, and this tier is a great place if you can. Like I kind of like in the second round, maybe more in the first, because I like to get a quarterback or a wide receiver in the first. But if you can attack this back end of this group in round 2, I think that's definitely an advantageous way to build your team, because then you can kind of just sit at running back and you don't feel an urgency to take one at all. And I do feel that way about a lot of running backs, and we're going to get into that in the next tier here. But this is definitely a good spot in the second round to try and get one of these back end first tier guys. So going into the second tier now, we got Ashton Genty, obviously going to be the only game in town for the Raiders on an improved offense. The offensive line is really bad, so I feel like this one is a little bit of buyer's beware. I've been kind of wanting to push him down a little bit because of it, but I'm trying not to let preseason kind of sway my opinion here. He's going to get all the rushing work. He's going to get all of the receiving work out of the backfield. And Geno, I feel like, will be good at getting him the ball. We saw how many targets he loaded up Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet with last year, and I feel like it could be more of the same for Genty as he gets comfortable in the offense. Next up is Jonathan Taylor. I feel like he's just pretty rock solid at this point. I know he had a couple of years where he was dealing with ankle injuries and stuff, but I really like his upside. He broke out in a major way in the second half of last year, was just very dominant down the stretch. Chase Brown, this is kind of the darling of the offseason. The Bengals did not address the position whatsoever, except for to cut Zach Moss, clearing the way for him even more. I couldn't be more excited to draft Chase Brown this year. Josh Jacobs. Jacobs should be high volume, a lot of scoring, maybe not necessarily as much passing game work, but I could see another 1,500-yard season here out of Jacobs. Kyron Williams finally got his contract, so I feel like everybody can kind of take a deep breath here about the fact that he's going to get loaded up with work, and if Jarquez Hunter or Blake Corum get more involved, okay, fine, but I think Kyron can take a step back forward in efficiency. I know that's a huge knock on him from last year, but when you're getting that much volume week over week over week, I think it just kind of comes with the territory of maybe you're grinding out short yardage more, you're grinding it out at the goal line more, and when you're scoring a lot, I feel like it kind of gets masked a little bit. So, maybe he gets a little bit of a breather more often and can increase his efficiency again. I'm not super worried about either of those guys. I really like Kyron this year. Next guy up is Bucky Irving. This is about as low as you're going to see him in any rankings because especially with Rachaad White getting hurt in the preseason now, so we don't know what his timeline is. And there's already been a big wave of more volume for Bucky. So if he does end up in the top 10 in usage, he could definitely exceed this rank and end up as a top 5 option at the position. So this is another group of guys that I really like getting as a hero RB build. And these guys, some of these guys go all the way down to the 4th round of 10-team Superflex leagues. So I feel like that makes the running back position easier and easier to attack than it has been in the past.
With Genty specifically, typically you're going to see him in kind of that first tier of 7, but it's just, and you're going to see him, as high as 4, 5, 6. But for me, it's just when I look at Derrick Henry's career, we've seen all of those guys already do it. And it's not like he's stepping into this juggernaut of a team. So I haven't really drafted him at all. I kind of just want to watch him as a fan and let it play out unless his value does fall. But there's just so many good players that, I already know are so established. And then with Bucky specifically, it's we're starting to hear a little bit more hype from the coaches on Sean Tucker as well. And Sean Tucker might just be the best 3rd string running back in football. We saw he was over 6 yards per carry last year with 50 carries. So I think Rachaad White's role once he comes back is still very established. He's great in pass protection, especially if, they're missing their left tackle for a significant amount of time. They're going to need him to protect Baker. But I know you're not allowed to say anything bad about Bucky, and I'm still targeting him. I'm just not getting too out of control.
Yeah, and for me, I just never end up with Bucky because of where I have him ranked here. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, he always goes before this, and he's some people have him pushed up at the beginning of this tier and are taking him in at the 2-3 turn, even in super flex leagues, and so if he's going at the beginning of the 3rd round, and that's where my pick is, I'm just not going to end up with him anywhere, unfortunately. All right, moving down to the next tier now. This is one of our biggest ranking risers is Omarion Hampton. Najee has the question mark with the health, and so Hampton's been getting all of the work in camp, and I could not be more excited about this guy. I mean, we've been reiterating this over and over again, but Greg Roman has started saying that he wants to give him a Derrick Henry workload. He's been catching passes. If he's just going to hit the ground running from day one, I genuinely feel like he could be a league winner down here. Next guy up is James Cook. As long as he's out there, I think he's going to be great. Now, I have knocked him down a lot throughout the offseason because of the contract issues and just because I am a little bit worried about touchdown regression. But I think in general, the offense is really good, and he's going to split less than he did last year because I just don't know that they're going to be blowing teams out in the same way. So I think a lot of that work for the backups came when he was either out or when the starters were mostly out of the game for the back end of the 3rd quarter and the 4th quarter, that type of stuff. So still really high on James Cook. We saw him be a top 13 running back 2 years ago with only 4 touchdowns. So I don't think this is solely dependent on touchdowns. If you're looking for upside, yeah, okay, maybe he's not going to get as high of upside because he's not going to score as much. But I think for how safe he is and how good he is, it's a good pick in this range. Next up is Alvin Kamara, just rock solid. I mean, throughout his whole career, the receiving floor is so high, you just can't go wrong. Picking him, he's not going to bottom out. Ken Walker, this guy might have the most upside of this group. I mean, if he stays healthy and is actually the workhorse in the offense, and he's getting, 4 or 5 targets a game, and he's getting 15 carries a game, 20 opportunities, that would be wheels up for Ken Walker. And I mean, we might be looking in week 6 like, oh man, he's like already RB5, and like, is this just going to continue? Because I know that happened last year, but then he got hurt. So we might be in a situation where we have that same feeling. And if he doesn't get hurt, he could definitely be a league winner out of this group. Next guy up, I did see you move Trevion Henderson up to 17. We're both all aboard the Trevion Henderson train. I mean, he caught 3 passes from Drake May in the preseason game. He returned a 100-yard kick. I mean, and he had an 18-yard run. He's just electric. It's just hard to deny at this point. And he's already good in pass protection. He's already good with ball security. Those are 2 huge issues that rookies can possibly have, and it's just not applicable for him. I think he's going to be on the field a lot. Chuba Hubbard. So this starts kind of another little mini tier here. I think we have all of these guys consensus ranked at 19, these next 3 guys. But Chuba is somebody that I like best of the group. I just think he's going to have a stable role. We just saw him be very productive in the lead role, and I don't think that anybody that they brought in, Trevor Etienne or Rico Dowdle, are really going to threaten his lead job. I think they're more there if something happens to him, that they're ready at the position. Breece Hall, obviously not great usage in the preseason week 1. He split 50% of the carries with the other 2 backs, Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen. And so for me, that's a huge blinking red light at this point in the offseason. I don't think on this offense that he's necessarily consistent enough or good enough to make do with lower volume. So I'm very worried about Breece Hall, not somebody I'm targeting at all. And then the next guy up is James Conner. I know is somebody that you really like. And obviously we talk about it all the time. When he's on the field, he's top 12 back. He was top 10 last year, stayed healthy. So if he's out there, he's going to be awesome for you. It's just another year older, and those injury concerns I think are still very valid to have. And the last guy in this tier is David Montgomery, just more of a rock solid contributor and player. And, you know, it's going to be a new offense, so this is a little bit iffy here, but this is like the last guy I feel good about as my RB2 if I can kind of lock him in, which is why I included him in this 3rd tier.
Yeah, I absolutely love this tier. If I miss out on the top end running backs and I hammer other positions, this is a tier that I'm very comfortable with. And I think with Breece Hall specifically, it's like sometimes the easiest answer is just the one that's right in front of you. Like the coaches all off season have been saying, we want this to be a committee. All 3 guys are great running backs, blah, blah, blah. And we know that the Jets are not going to be this high powered offense. So I'm, pushing him down more and more as the weeks go by, but it is, I understand being tempted because of the talent, but I don't know. It's just kind of right in front of our eyes. And then with Hampton, obviously such a bummer to see Rashawn Slater go down. I don't think I texted you for a whole day because I was just so sad. And then with James Cook, it's like, can they just, it's like, and then with Cook, it's like, can they just give him the same contract that they gave Kyron? Like just match it. Just match it.
And let's get it over with too, because it's just like the longer he holds out, he's one of those guys that isn't a superstar that I'm more and more worried about every passing day that he's not practicing. So the first guy in the next tier is DeAndre Swift. This is fueled a lot by my ranking. I definitely have him pushed up, and I feel like it's one of those things where they didn't bring in a major competition for him really at all. They still have Roshan Johnson, and they brought in Kyle Monungai, 7th round running back, but I think that this might be wheels up for DeAndre Swift, and he's been familiar with the Ben Johnson offense. So it's something where if they are going to use him a lot, I can see a situation where he gets quite a bit of passing game work along with quite a bit of rushing work and could be pretty valuable for your fantasy teams, even as we kind of push on in the rankings here. I have him ranked 21st amongst running backs, and I really think that he could add some value to your teams. Next guy up is Joe Mixon. He's like impossible to rank right now. I have no idea what to do with him because of the injury. And so if he's out there week 1 and looks decent, this is going to be an extreme value. But if he's starts the season on the pup, it's going to be really hard to kind of navigate around him. So that was why it felt like last starter or first bench player is kind of where his value should be. So that's where I ended up, kind of hanging with him here. And as we get closer, if it's looking more and more bleak, I'm probably going to push him down a little bit. RJ Harvey, excellent debut in the preseason. He played almost all of the snaps with the starters. He got 7 opportunities to Dobbins 1. And I know he was listed 5th, but apparently that didn't really matter. So very excited to be drafting RJ Harvey now. I feel a lot more confident going in on him as my 3rd or even potential 2nd if you wait an extremely long time at running back. Next up is Caleb Johnson. So I do like Caleb Johnson. I feel like you like Johnson more than me. Should get a pretty predominant role on early downs, but it's going to come down to pass protection. If he misses a block and Rodgers kicks him off the field, we all know that could be something that's not good for him. Pollard, and I'm getting very excited to draft Pollard at this point, with Spears getting injured in the first preseason game. So, we could see a situation where he's back out there for 70% of the snaps to start the year. And if that's going to be his role, he's going to produce as a top 20 running back to start the year. Aaron Jones is next. So obviously Jordan Mason is there and is going to probably take quite a bit of goal line work. So that could cap Aaron Jones's upside a little bit, but he only scored 5 touchdowns last year. So, I'm not sure how much that role is really going to impact him. It's not like he was scoring from close anyways. He was just getting stuffed over and over on the goal line. One of the most frustrating parts about owning him. They get down to the 1 yard line, they give it to him and he loses 2 yards and then they throw it in, or, loses a fumble on the goal line, or just so frustrating. He had so many goal line chances and just didn't convert at a very high rate. So I feel like this is still a good spot for him though, even if his role declines a bit. Brian Robinson. And so this is probably the point in the draft at running back where I'm starting to feel the heat a little bit. If I don't have my 4th one yet and one of these guys are on the board, that's where I'm really going to be leaning into the running back position. Now, that doesn't always work out. Sometimes these guys are going to be your 3rd. And so, Brian Robinson, I still feel like is a solid starter when you need him, bye weeks, that type of stuff. He's going to give you quite a bit of value. You're just hoping he scores touchdown on a given week that you play him. But it is a little bit nerve-wracking at this point in the rankings. And the last guy in this tier is Tyrone Tracy. So I wasn't going to include him in this tier, but he had also a very good showing in the first preseason game, right? He played almost all of the snaps with the starters. And obviously Scatabo is still hurt, so we don't know how that dynamic is going to play out. But as a rookie, missing critical training camp reps is just something that starts you behind the 8 ball, and it's really hard to catch up during the season. We kind of saw that with Marshawn Lloyd. Obviously not the same dynamic with Josh Jacobs, but he never even ended up getting out on the field. He kind of got healthy and then was kind of battling it and then just couldn't really carve out a role. So not that that's going to happen with Scatabo, but I'm a little bit more in on Tyrone Tracy, knowing that he's probably going to hit the ground running early in the season as the starter. So build a little bit of building confidence there. And again, if I'm looking at these guys, it's more as like I waited a lot and I'm looking for my 3rd, or I'm really trying to get my 4th at this point in the draft.
Yeah, like looking at this tier specifically for someone who's, waited a long time at running back and you are looking for your RB2, there's a couple names that I would feel fairly confident in, and that's, Swift and Pollard, right? Because like Swift, I don't think he necessarily has this like sky high ceiling, but we see every year he finishes between RB 18 and RB 23. And I don't think that Roschon Johnson is that good, honestly, but his one calling card is he has a nose for the end zone when they get close. So I do think that they're going to ride him in that role. And then with Pollard, the offense should be a lot better. The offensive line is better. So he's someone I'm becoming more and more interested in. And I know you mentioned with Caleb Johnson, me being the higher guy on him. I will say, he didn't look super great in the preseason game and looked a little bit slow. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that all shakes out. But I'm not trying to worry too much with him. He's just kind of someone that if he is a target of mine, hopefully I can start him on the bench to start the year.
Kicking off the next tier, we've got Isaiah Pacheco. This is probably my least favorite player to draft. And I've started seeing him in these 0 RB builds as like a great target. And I just am not there. I just am so worried about having multiple running backs there, right? They signed Kareem Hunt. They signed Elijah Mitchell. They drafted Brashard Smith. I just don't know that a workhorse role is coming here. And that was kind of his whole deal. So if he's going to be splitting up carries or receptions with anybody else, I'm just not super over the top on his talent. And so I don't know why. I just can't get there on him this year. And if I'm wrong and he's just hits the ground running with all of the work, I'm going to feel weird about that and have it based on how convicted I was all offseason about not taking him. Next guy up is Javonte Williams. He should start as Dallas's number 1, so might as well take a shot at this point just in case that sticks. Quinshon Judkins, impossible to rank again. We just don't know if he's going to sign, when he's going to sign, if he's going to get put on the commissioner's exempt list. So, assuming that he doesn't get put on the exempt list and actually signs, he's still behind the 8 ball. So I still don't feel great about drafting him. But at this point in the offseason, I still feel like we have to kind of rank him just in case overnight we get a resolution, and all of a sudden he's back to being RB25 or something. So that's the only reason he's here. Next guy up is Zach Charbonnet. We know what he can do when Ken Walker goes down. I don't know how much of a role he's going to carve out for himself, but if he does at all, I feel like he can have a little bit of flex value on any given week, and is the single best handcuff in fantasy. So if you get Walker, getting Charbonnet feels almost like a must. Jalen Warren. So, I kind of think he might be significantly more involved than people are expecting. So that's why I have him ranked so high. I'm kind of down on Caleb Johnson because of it. I don't know exactly what to think there either. That's one of those backfields that if you guess right and you get the right player and they kind of hone in on using one of them, I think that you're going to get an extraordinary value down here. I mentioned him when I talked about Aaron Jones is Jordan Mason. We saw when McCaffrey went down that he was excellent as a ball carrier last year. So, he's much better than anybody else that they had running behind Jones. I expect him to have a big role in the offense. All short yardage, I expect to be him. And I expect him to get, maybe not full drives and stuff, but I expect him to be worked in on early downs quite a bit. So, passing game, maybe not so much. I think that's going to be a lot of Aaron Jones, but at this stage, I feel like you could do a lot worse in terms of like a desperation flex type of play than Jordan Mason. Next guy up is Tank Bigsby, and I have been getting a little bit more excited about him specifically because I do think he's going to dominate early downs. Now, I say that as Travis Etienne just had 100% of the first team snaps in their preseason game. So if that repeats in week 2, I'm probably going to have to think about this a little bit harder because the beat reports and what's happening in the preseason will have or will be pretty conflicting. And so if ETN is going to be the guy that's out there a lot more than anybody else in this backfield, we did see 2 years ago he was RB3. So I might have to look into moving Travis Etienne up significantly if he continues to play that sort of snap share with the first team. And speaking of ETN, that's the last guy in this tier.
Yeah, so this is kind of the tier that just doesn't really interest me a whole lot. I think at this point in the draft, I'm going to be looking to fill out some depth at the wide receiver position, maybe a third quarterback in super flex. And I'm just kind of looking at all these guys and I'm like, maybe, but I do understand the excitement with, Jacksonville specifically, because I do think if you do hit right, and we saw the type of run system that Liam Cohen orchestrated at Tampa Bay, that there's going to be some serious value. So I still do have ETN ahead of Bigsby. And my issue with Bigsby is I just never really was all that in on him. And I know he had that very short stretch last year where he was kind of trade for this guy, buy low, waiver wire, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know. I just don't necessarily think he's a world beater. So that's kind of my strategy with these guys outside of a handcuff for Walker. And then I guess, maybe Javonte, that one is interesting. But, when we did the early waiver wire prediction video, we kind of talked about Miles Sanders, who knows how that's going to shake out. But I think he's one of those guys that if there is, something left in the tank or he does, look really good, then can definitely outperform this.
Yeah, I agree. I'm usually looking tight end at this point, right? I wait at tight end, and then that's kind of where I'm at with, all the players in this range. I just don't really end up with any of them outside of Bigsby because I feel like he goes in round 14 or 15. And having him ranked up here, he's the one ADP outlier currently that doesn't go in this group. Moving on to the last tier now. Knock this out quick. We got Austin Eckler, one of my favorite late round picks, or last round picks, I should say. He goes super late. He's in a good offense. And if there's any chance that he maintains that passing game role, I think he could have some standalone flex value in a way that some of these other guys might not even have. Najee Harris, if he's not on the field, I am super worried about him. This is being driven by your ranking of him. I think I have him 10 spots in RBs behind where you're at on him. Tajay Spears, he just got hurt, so that's kind of way up in the air. I did have him much more aggressively ranked before that, so now I just am kind of out here. I don't know really if you can expect much from him at all this season, much less in the first 6 weeks. So keep an eye on how he's recovering. He's supposed to be out 4 weeks. And if he is healing faster than expected, then maybe he's still worth that late round flyer. Dylan Sampson, he's one of my favorite guys to take down here just because of Quinshon Judkins. And I do think that his talent exceeds Jerome Ford. So although Jerome Ford is expected to be the lead back to start the year, I don't think that lasts very long into the season if Sampson shows anything whatsoever. And I expect him to because I really like the talent here. One of those guys that was, starting to break into top 5 running backs before the NFL draft. Next up is Ramondre Stevenson. And after watching the preseason game, I'm like, oh man, I should maybe have him a little bit ranked a little more aggressively because he got 7 carries. And, not that they were like great carries or that he did a lot with it. I just was kind of expecting his role to be almost gone. And the fact that he was out there for so many running carries, I think maybe Henderson is going to have more of that Gibbs start to his career where it's like 7 and 4 targets type of thing. And Stevenson still handles 15 carries. And if that's how it starts, you're going to be pretty happy to have Ramondre early in the season. I might need to move him into those targets for your 0 RB builds because, if he's still going to get that much work in an improved offense, he could be valuable early in the year. And then Cam Scatabo. So unfortunately, I just don't think the injury is going to be healed by week 1. And I think all the missed reps is going to hurt him quite a bit early in the season. So if you do take him, be patient with him and try to see an increased role as we get going into the year, because that's ultimately what you're looking for beyond performance. Next guy up is Jaden Blue. So obviously a burner, and there has been some very interesting reports around him, but I think Dallas's situation is wide open enough where the 5th round rookie could emerge, especially with all the speed he has, and could, hit a couple long ones. And then all of a sudden he's growing into a bigger role. Nick Chubb, I wish I could push him higher, but all the negative reports about him in camp are just keeping him down here. I do still really like to target him and get him in the last round of my drafts just in case he is RB1 and Mixon has a more serious injury maybe than they're even letting on. But the fact that, Mixon is going to be back relatively quickly, I think makes Chubb like on the borderline of being drafted. Isaac Rendo, and again, maybe he should be ranked right next to Zach Charbonnet because of how important of a handcuff he is, but he's hurt himself. So it's like, okay, so who actually is going to be the handcuff? And like, if he's not ready, is it going to be somebody else who's gotten all the camp reps? I mean, that's kind of how Jordan Mason came into the role last year. So, we'll see if he can get healthy and kind of reclaim that RB2 role and make sure he is the handcuff. And the last guy we're going to talk about here is J.K. Dobbins. So I mentioned him with R.J. Harvey not getting a ton of touches, but there have been a lot of positive reports out of camp about his pass protection being ahead of RJ Harvey. So if he mixes in at least a little bit on early downs and then does get the passing down work, there could be quite a bit of value here early in the season. But I think ultimately Harvey's going to end up taking over most of that role throughout the season. So I would be looking much more towards Harvey over Dobbins.
I would say for me specifically in this tier, someone who's definitely been the heaviest target of mine is Dylan Sampson for a lot of the reasons that you already said. And with these kind of late round guys, it kind of just depends on how you like to draft, how your team's been configured, how deep of bench spots you have. Because if you're saying, I've only got 4 bench and I think I can use Ramondre the first month of the season in a pinch, or one of my guys goes down, or however I built out that team, that might have more value to you than someone like Cam Scatabo when you have 6 bench spots and you have a deep RB build and you can be patient. So a lot of these younger guys are typically who I like to target in the later rounds, but even seeing like J.K. Dobbins too kind of fits into that Ramondre category.
Thank you so much for watching. Those are our RB rankings heading into draft season, and good luck in all of your drafts. Look forward to talking to you in the next one.